So, Benjamin, can foreign countries just decide to recognize statehood for another country, especially such a controversial one in the midst of a war?
First of all, I want to go back and comment on Keir Starmer. This statement is emblematic of the supine nature of his non-leadership as Prime Minister of once Great Britain. It is a statement that once makes a declaration and then withdraws the absolute nature of that declaration. It's a statement that expresses a direction and then says that it has no idea whether the destination toward which it is facing will actually be pursued and arrived at. It's a statement that is a nod and a taking of the knee to the growing Islamic population inside his borders. I wonder how Keir Starmer would react if there was a declaration by an Israeli Prime Minister to the idea that autonomy ought to be assigned to the Islamic communities and populations inside Great Britain, some of whom openly expressed that they want such a reality to come about. What Keir Starmer ought to have said is, if Hamas does not return our hostages, the living and the dead, and hand over its arms, lay down its arms and surrender by September at the United Nations General Assembly, Great Britain will announce that it is once and for all removing the agenda of Palestinian statehood from British statesmanship, British foreign policy. That would have been the appropriate ultimatum. Of course, he lacks the guts, the gumption to do any such thing. And with regard to your question, absolutely not. Other countries cannot declare statehood on behalf of another people, certainly not under the current circumstances. Thankfully, President Donald Trump immediately responded to Starmer's imbecilically weak statement by saying that he was not on board with that statement. Rightly so, President Trump has again been correct on this particular issue. And when I see that this is part of a general movement, for example, we saw that the Arab League in its entirety, along with another 17 countries at the United Nations, declared that they wanted a pathway towards a two-state solution. I say that I have absolutely no interest in that pathway because I have absolutely no interest in its destination. Its destination being the establishment of the state for the Palestinian Arabs, not just on the periphery of the state of Israel, but right into the heartland of the state of Israel, calling for the right of return, as that confab did, calling for Jerusalem to be partitioned and serve as part of the capital, this newfangled state. All of this needs to be dismissed. It's high time that people understood and recognized when you have an entity, a polity, a peoplehood, who have shown themselves desirous and willing and actually capable of storming our border, murdering 1,200 of our people, kidnapping 252, still holding our hostages. That group is absolutely disqualified from statehood. It's not rocket science, it's quite straightforward, and I implore my government in Israel to leap on the only viable outcome that's currently being discussed, namely the Trump vision for the Gaza Strip. Let's give the Gazans the opportunity to relocate. Let's call on these wonderfully sympathetic states around the world to absorb the Gazans if they're so concerned about them, by the way, beginning with Egypt. And then let's see what we can do the day after that occurs.
Those are some powerful inputs that you bring to the table here, and seems very sensible. What is the next step? What is the snowball effect here? Will other Western countries follow, in your opinion, Benjamin?
Well, other Western countries will follow because of the simple fact that other Western countries are incapable of leading. They are losing their place of prominence astride the international community, erroneously referred to, incidentally. There's no such thing as an international community in reality. They're losing their place of prominence. They've lost their own ideas of self and of self-identity and of statehood and the values for which they are supposed to stand. And I really do believe that the state of Israel must now do that which is required. It must state with greater intensity than has been the case to this point that it intends to implement the Donald Trump vision for the Gaza Strip. And I'll repeat it. give the Gazans the opportunity and the incentive, incidentally, to locate themselves outside of the Gaza Strip and start to rebuild something in its stead. The bottom line here is you cannot have the Gazan population that supports Hamas, that supported Hamas taking leadership in the Gaza Strip, that applauded and lauded and feted Hamas when they dragged our dead soldiers, our hostages and our innocents through the streets of Gaza on October 7th, that readily replenished the ranks of Hamas to this very day, are ready recruits to Hamas's terror organization. That population cannot be permitted to live and to mass on the borders of the state of Israel. That's the primary lesson that ought to have been learned from October the 7th. And I know that a lot of people covet normalization with the Saudis, and I understand why, but I would implore everybody to recognize the fact that normalization deals are not designed to, and nor did they prevent massacres that were launched against the people of Israel. We had normalizations with the UAE, with Bahrain, with Morocco, prior to October the 7th. Those normalization agreements did nothing to prevent the massacre of October 7th, nor were they designed to do so. And so when the Saudis dangle that carrot in front of us on condition that we give away the heartland of Israel to another people, that we divide Jerusalem to provide a capital to another people, that we flood Israel with returning Palestinian Arabs who claim that they have a right to come here, we ought to say to the Saudis, listen, if you want to normalize with us under normal conditions. Don't ask us to do the impossible, and don't ask us to accept for ourselves a standard that you would never accept upon yourselves.
Makes sense. Emmanuel, how do you think Israel should respond to all of this?
I think at this point it is about time to be much bolder. And that starts with stopping to use the very expression two-state solution, which is a conceptual trap which was conceived by Soviet propaganda in the 1960s and 70s. So when people use this expression two-state solution, they imply that the source of the conflict in the Middle East is the absence of a 22nd Arab state, which obviously is not the case. So Israel has to start by challenging this very concept and this other part of Soviet propaganda, which invented a so-called Palestinian people, which nobody had ever heard about before the Six-Day War. So I think it's about time for Israel to throw the globe and stop playing around saying, well, yes, we are in favor of two-state solution, but not right now. It's not the right time. It's not that it's not the right time. It's not the right concept. And it's about time to say the truth. Because where we're standing right now, when you have the president of France and the prime minister of Britain saying, you know, if we establish a 22nd failed Arab state that will threaten Israel's very security and existence, the Middle East will look like Western Europe. No, it will not. So it's about time, as I said, that Israel's public diplomacy become much more aggressive, throws the gloves, and to the point.
Now let's move on to the Netherlands. We are seeing that they banned Israeli ministers, Smotrich and Ben Gvir, from their country because of their calling out for what they see as ethnic cleansing. The foreign minister Saar, he summoned the Dutch ambassador to Israel. What do you make of this story, Benjamin?
Well, first of all, this is another teetering temporary government, just as I mentioned about Keir Starmer, so I will say about the Dutch government. This is a temporary government that is on its last legs as a result of the departure of Geert Wilders, who was a strong proponent of putting up a clear, very clear, determined, resolute opposition to the Islamification of his country, incidentally, and of the European Union in its entirety. So I don't give too much attention to this statement. I think it's further pandering. What I will say, though, is it's very important that the viewers of this channel, who may find themselves under a certain degree of pressure, who may even be wondering whether these allegations against Israel are true in light of the recent slander, namely that there's a famine falsely alleged about Israel, it's important for the viewers to know that this is merely a continuation of throwing anything and everything at the wall of public opinion when it comes to slandering Israel and seeing what sticks. It began with the idea of ethnic cleansing. The population of the Gaza Strip is estimated at being as high as 2 million. I think it's actually lower than that, but let's take that number as a working figure. Out of the 2 million, the most outlandish, exaggerated figures that are put forward by Hamas say that 60,000 Palestinian Arabs in Gaza have been killed during the course of this war. Now, that figure, by our estimations, is a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning one terrorist for one non-combatant, which is an astoundingly low rate of proportionality, an astoundingly low ratio. So there's no ethnic cleansing going on at all. Then you have, of genocide going on. Then you have the idea of ethnic cleansing. We're in precisely the quandary we're in inside the Gaza Strip because the Gazans have been moved out of the firing line to safe zones, and we are preserving and protecting their lives, moving them away from the areas of hot conflict. So there is absolutely no ethnic cleansing whatsoever. And now comes the ridiculously false allegation of famine. Last week alone, 90 million meals were said to have been delivered by the GHF since its establishment. This is false, it's untrue, and we need to take these allegations and put the lie to them. There's no genocide, there's no ethnic cleansing, there's no famine, there is merely a unique anti-Israel standard wielded against us.